Throughout the course of history, disease outbreaks have ravaged humanity, sometimes changing the course of history and, at times, signaling the end of an entire civilization. Here's a look at 10 of the worst epidemics and pandemics in history. Antonine Plague, AD 165 to 180. When soldiers returned to the Roman Empire from campaigning, they brought back more than the spoils of victory. The Antonine Plague, which may have been smallpox, laid waste to an army and may have killed over 5 million people. Many historians believe that the epidemic was first brought into the Roman Empire by soldiers returning home after a war against Parthia. After AD 180, instability grew throughout the Roman Empire as it experienced more civil wars and invasions by barbarian groups. Christianity became increasingly popular in the time after the plague occurred. Plague of Justinian, AD 541-542. The Byzantine Empire was ravaged by the bubonic plague, which marked the start of its decline. The plague reoccurred periodically afterwards. Some estimates suggest that up to 10% of the world's population died. The plague is named after the Byzantine Emperor Justinian, who reigned AD 527 to 565. The Black Death, 1346 to 1353. The Black Death traveled from Asia to Europe, leaving devastation in its wake. Some estimates suggest that it wiped out over half of Europe's population. It was caused by a strain of bacterium that was spread from fleas on infected rodents. The bodies of victims were buried in mass graves. Cocolistli epidemic, 1545 to 1548. The infection that caused the Cocolistli epidemic was a form of viral hemorrhagic fever that killed 15 million inhabitants of Mexico and Central America. Among the population already weakened by extreme drought, the disease proved to be utterly catastrophic. Cocolistli is the Aztec word for pest. American plagues, 16th century. The American plagues are a cluster of Eurasian diseases brought to the Americas by European explorers. These illnesses, including smallpox, contributed to the collapse of the Inca and Aztec civilizations. Some estimates suggest that 90% of the indigenous population in the Western Hemisphere was killed off. The disease helped a Spanish force led by Hernán Cortés conquer the Aztecs in 1519, and another Spanish force led by Francisco Pizarro to conquer the Incas in 1532. Great Plague of London, 1665 to 1666. The Black Death's last major outbreak in Great Britain caused a mass exodus from London, led by King Charles II. The plague started in April 1665 and spread rapidly through the hot summer months. Fleas from plague-infected rodents were one of the main causes of transmission. By the time the plague ended, about 100,000 people, including 15% of the population of London, had died. Flu pandemic, 1889 to 1890. In the modern industrial age, new transport links made it easier for influenza viruses to wreak havoc. In just a few months, the disease spanned the globe, killing 1 million people. It took just 5 weeks for the epidemic to reach peak mortality. The earliest cases were reported in Russia. The virus spread rapidly throughout St. Petersburg before quickly making its way throughout Europe and the rest of the world, despite the fact that air travel did not yet exist. Spanish flu, 1918 to 1920. An estimated 500 million people from the South Seas to the North Pole fell victim to Spanish flu. 1/5 of those died, with some indigenous communities pushed to the brink of extinction. The flu spread and lethality was enhanced by the cramped conditions of soldiers and poor wartime nutrition that many people were experiencing during World War I. Despite the name Spanish flu, the disease likely did not start in Spain. Spain was a neutral nation during the war and did not enforce strict censorship of its press, which could therefore freely publish early accounts of the illness. As a result, people falsely believed the illness was specific to Spain, and the name Spanish flu stuck. Asian flu, 1957 to 1958. The Asian flu pandemic was another global showing for influenza. With its roots in China, the disease claimed more than 1 million lives. The virus that caused the pandemic was a blend of avian flu viruses. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention note that the disease spread rapidly and was reported in Singapore in February 1957, Hong Kong 2 months later, and the coastal cities of the United States by summer. The total death toll was more than 1.1 million worldwide, with 116,000 deaths occurring in the United States. The AIDS pandemic and epidemic, 1981 to present day. AIDS has claimed an estimated 35 million lives since it was first identified. HIV, which is the virus that causes AIDS, likely developed from a chimpanzee virus that transferred to humans in West Africa in the 1920s. The virus made its way around the world, and AIDS was a pandemic by the 20th century. Now, about 64% of the estimated 40 million people living with human immunodeficiency virus live in sub-Saharan Africa. For decades, the disease had not known a cure, but medication developed in the 1990s now allows people with the disease to experience a normal lifespan with regular treatment. Even more encouraging, 2 people have been cured of HIV as early as 2020.